The Huawei Mate 10 Pro is one premium phone. Everything from the elaborate wallpapers to the fabric finish on the icons in the software show how much Huawei wants us to think this. There's even a mocha brown version of the phone, which as you could imagine would look pretty weird on the Galaxy S8 or the iPhone 8, but it works here because that rustic aesthetic is exactly what Huawei has gone for. The Mate 10 Pro has Gorilla Glass 5 covering the front and the back of the phone, and we've got this rather unusual band running across the back, which accentuates the camera. Now, when the Mate 10 officially was unveiled, a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit unsure about the band, but you grow to like it, and the fact that there is some sort of feature on the rear of the smartphone prevents it looking bland. There is also a real emphasis on symmetry here. We've got the dual flash and the laser focus modules both flanking the dual vertical cameras. It's also one of the slimmer and lighter phones housing a 6-inch display. Not a featherweight by any means, but at the same time much lighter than a phone like the iPhone 8 Plus. Combine that with the soft curves on the rear of the phone and the ever so slightly smoothed down aluminium trim going around the sides, and it's a comfortable phone to hold. The finish can still get fingerprints all over it, and I do prefer the P10's Hyper Diamond cut finish for the extra grip, but this is still one of Huawei's best. Now we've got that display, and it truly is beautiful. This is a 6-inch AMOLED display with an 80.9% screen-to-body ratio. So side by side with the Pixel 2 XL, which also has a 6-inch display, this phone actually manages to feel a little bit more compact. It's still a large device, and it's going to need two hands to fully operate, but it's doing pretty well when it comes to managing the bezels and making sure the screen is dominating the front. It's bright and also colourful, and watching videos on the screen is a joy. It's got an 18:9 aspect ratio, which means while some content won't necessarily fill the screen, more and more applications are starting to support it, and reading articles and browsing the web here is as good as it's ever been. Now with the Mate 10 Pro, Huawei actually downgraded the resolution compared to the standard Mate 10, which is nothing short of a really odd move. The sheer contrast on offer though almost completely makes up for it. Also, don't forget, we do still have a pixel density of 402 ppi, which is technically speaking more than enough to serve up some really crispy content. The Mate 10 gets better though. It does have a few defining characteristics that I do really like. For example, 128GB of inbuilt storage, as standard. We never really see that on any smartphone. On top of that, it's got a decent speaker arrangement. We've got the earpiece on top, which handles a lot of the treble when you're listening to music, and the standard downwards firing speaker, which handles the bass. Now, it's not a perfect setup, and it's nowhere near as good as the Pixel 2 XL's dual front-facing speakers, but at the same time, it's a mile better than the Galaxy Note 8's. The Mate 10 Pro is also a really fast phone. It's built on top of the in-house Kirin 970, and it's also got 6GB of RAM. When it comes to its peak performance, it doesn't quite hit the highest levels reached by the Snapdragon 835 or the Exynos 8895. But at the same time, throughout the UI, it's fluid and responsive. Lag times are close to zero, and the software very rarely hangs. As you therefore probably guessed, gaming also poses very little problem for the phone. The resolution is high enough to enjoy the content, but not so high that it puts a strain and causes lag and stutter. Now, I do have a bit of a mixed opinion when it comes to the camera. We're combining a 12MP RGB sensor here with a 20MP monochrome one, and the Mate 10 on paper has practically the best camera specifications in the world because both of these sensors have an f1.6 aperture. And I've been using this camera for a couple of weeks now, and I have noticed the shutter and the focus times are fast, but that Huawei is really taking a different direction when it comes to mobile photography. The Mate 10 and the Mate 10 Pro over here is less about accuracy and more about artistry. Photos come out almost Instagram ready, they feel quite processed, and the monochrome mode is an artist's dream. Even so, I do think the wide-angle and telephoto lens combination that we see on most dual-camera smartphones does work a little bit better. On the Galaxy Note 8, for example, you can use something called dual capture mode to take two photos at the same time, one in wide-angle and one zoomed in. That's actually really useful. Whilst I would say on balance the Mate 10's camera doesn't quite reach the Galaxy Note 8 or the Pixel 2 XL, it doesn't exactly leave you with a bad taste in the mouth either. After spending this much time with the Mate 10 Pro, I can say one thing for sure. Huawei likes to do things their own way. We've seen it with the camera, we've seen it with the in-house Kirin 970, and you'll also see it with the Emotion UI software. Now with the Mate 10 and Mate 10 Pro, this software has reached version 8.0. Conveniently also the Android version it's on. And whilst I don't like how aesthetically distant it is from Google's own, what I would say is that it's a considered approach to a smartphone user experience. You'll notice your wallpaper changes without you even asking. You'll notice the phone is automatically counting your steps and showing you them on your lock screen. For the most part, it feels like a user-centric experience, and that is a good thing. Now, the phone does have a lot of software baked into it, almost a little bit too much for my liking. We've got Huawei's own tools, the torch, the calculator, which are fairly simple and work as expected, but then you've got Huawei's apps and also Google's apps on top of that. On the other hand though, it's not like the phone doesn't have enough storage to cope with it. One thing I really do like about the Mate 10 Pro is that Huawei has prioritized the battery life. They have placed a 4000 mAh capacity battery in there, and that puts it among the largest of any flagship phone this year. And it's good. It's not quite as efficient as some of the other smartphones I've tested, which leaves it with a somewhat above average battery life when it could have been outstanding, but I've noticed it has been getting a little better with software updates, and it has an awesome standby time. You could leave this phone entirely overnight unplugged and only expect to lose about 3% of your juice. It's also impossible to fully review the Huawei Mate 10 and Mate 10 Pro without talking about the neural processing unit inside. This is a dedicated chip which is designed to handle AI tasks much more efficiently than they would be done otherwise. Unfortunately, I'm sure when I mention AI it's bringing up images of killer robots and sci-fi movies. What it actually does is a little bit less exciting, but not necessarily less intelligent. The NPU is constantly running in the background, handling a lot of the behind-the-scenes tasks so that you don't have to think about them. Subtle things that'll help you perhaps extend your battery life or take slightly better photos. For example, when you're in the camera app, you'll notice this little icon that actually changes based on what you're shooting. It can distinguish between dogs and cats, cloudy weather from sunny, and a portrait from a group shot, and it'll adjust things accordingly to try and make it better. But as I said, a lot of what this chip does is behind the scenes, so it's not like having this on board all of a sudden makes the Mate 10 some next generation device, or gives you access to some exclusive features that no other smartphone can do. In its current state, it's more for optimization. It's a shame to see that the Mate 10 Pro has no wireless charging, no headphone jack, and an IP67 rating instead of the IP68 that a lot of its competitors do, which makes it feel like a phone that is so ahead, but at the same time in some ways kind of behind. The Mate 10 Pro is a smartphone full of ideas. It is the pinnacle of Huawei's lineup, but at the same time is as forward-looking as it is consolidated. It is a great phone, and one that is cheaper than a lot of the rivals that it stands toe-to-toe with. Thanks a lot for watching guys, I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.